Hi, my name is Chris Koneski. I'm the editor of the Des Moines Business Record. We're here today to talk a little bit about the culture scene in Des Moines and in Iowa in general. What we've done is we've gathered a group of leaders from that community and to talk a little bit about the challenges and some of the opportunities going into the next year. Where the idea for this really came from, we have power breakfast events, and a lot of times what we do is we bring the panelists in advance of the event, and we have a discussion about some of the challenges and opportunities. And we've always felt that that's some of the best discussion that we have, and we always learn a lot of good story ideas and about the different organizations that the people are involved in. And so that's what we're kind of hoping to do with this event today. We won't be addressing the camera after this after I open up here. We're just going to have a discussion, and hopefully you guys will be a fly on the wall and enjoy what you learn. So with us today and joining us are Mary County. She's the director of the Iowa Department of Cultural Affairs. We have Jeff Chelsvig to my right, president and CEO of the Des Moines Performing Arts, not the Civic Center of Greater Des Moines. We have M.D. Isley. He's the dean of business management and information technology at Des Moines Area Community College, and he's also the former executive director of Bravo Greater Des Moines. And we have Tiffany Tauschek, vice president of marketing and development at Des Moines Convention and Visitors Bureau. So now I'm going to turn over to Megan Bearhouse. She's our newest reporter. She joined us in September, and she joined us from Ankeny Patch. She covers retail, sales and marketing, and of course culture for the Business Record. So she's going to get an opportunity to learn a little bit from all of you today and get some good story ideas for next year. So Megan, why don't you take it away?
All right. So to kick things off, let's start with the first question. What is the biggest challenge you feel is facing the Des Moines culture scene today? Jeff?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is the same challenge that we've had for a number of years, and that is competition for cultural organizations is people staying at home. Most of the time, to enjoy a cultural organization's fair, you have to leave home. And as we get more sophisticated with our home theaters and the things that are available online, the tendency for people is to stay home. And so, to me, what that presents is a great opportunity to try and make sure that we are doing quality programming in a really great environment, and that the fabric of what is necessary for people to come to our shows includes easy parking, great restaurants, things like that. But that, I think, has been the competition for years.
If I could add to that, I completely agree with Jeff. In addition to staying home, I think it's not uncommon, not Des Moines or Greater Des Moines being unique by any manner, but within a lot of communities, that we as a public tend to take arts and culture for granted. So not only do we stay at home, but perhaps we assume that no matter what, these organizations will always be here and always be well funded. And it's important for the community as a whole to recognize that these are nonprofit organizations in many cases, most cases, and they do rely on not only contributions and those types of support, but simply participation and support through ticket admissions or whatever it might be as well.
Mm-hmm. From our perspective, limited funding is an issue. It's an ongoing challenge, especially when we're trying to attract new visitors into the community. The more dollars that we're able to invest in marketing and advertising, the more visitors we can attract. We have a great conversion rate when it comes to marketing to those individuals, prospective visitors, and actually getting them here into the city. Once they've been here once, they want to come back again. They realize it's an arts and culture community. They view it as hip and artful and full of vibe. These are all specific things that we've received from research and surveys from these visitors. But I think it's important to point out that we're funded by hotel motel tax. So the more visitors that we attract, the larger our marketing budget grows. And so that's something that we're always looking and striving to do, is to grow that budget so that we can continue to market the city as an arts and culture community.
I have a question for you. When you're talking about bringing people into the city, how do you measure? Are you measuring people from outside of the metro area, or how does that kind of work?
So we typically market, our primary target would be a 300-mile radius. around Greater Des Moines. So we would not include, somebody from Dallas County would not count as a visitor, for example. So they would definitely have to be from at least 75 miles or beyond from the city's core in order to be counted as a visitor.
And I think just to piggyback on what each of these folks said, an ongoing challenge, and it's always going to exist in the sector, is simply the innate nature of the sector, which is not being a nonprofit and frankly having to fend for oneself. And so there you have the competitive nature. Not only were you competing for somebody to actually leave their house, but then it's you are competing, you can view it with other institutions that have performances at night or whatnot, knowing you have different programming, but I'm saying in terms of what is an audience attracted to. Some may be drawn to the symphony, some maybe it's the opera, some maybe it's the zoo, you name it. Whereas hopefully we can continue to get to a point knowing, and I think Greater Des Moines and across Iowa, you are seeing this trend that trying to be more collaborative in terms of knowing what floats all boats. And then in the end, to Tiffany's point, better, let's say, messaging and ensuring communities understand the value and what we all do. Because ultimately, when you talk about heads in beds, people just think of, oh, we've got how many people that come in for a wrestling tournament or Drake relays, you name it. They're not thinking about people that come in. They're going to drive in, they're going to buy gas, they're going to go out to dinner, stay the night, and go see Wicked. And that's a huge connection to economic development, and we just have to make that better connection of why people need to continue to see the value in Iowa being a culturally vibrant state.
I'd like to say that this was a long time ago. This is 1997 or it was 1996 when we announced that we were bringing the Phantom of the Opera here for 4 weeks, which was 80,000 tickets to sell. We ultimately did 5 weeks, which was 100,000 tickets. But I remember 2 executive directors of cultural institutions came up to me when we made that announcement and said, "You're trying to put me out of business because people are going to buy tickets to that and not come to my show." And I said, well, I don't know that that's entirely true. And so about 6 months after the show closed, I went to each of those people and I said, "So how was the season that you just ended?" They said, "It was our best year ever." So I think that the thing, just respectfully, I think what we find is that if you can get somebody to go to a performance, that will, and they have a good experience, that will intrigue them enough to look at doing something else. And I think that is why you've probably seen a growth of community theater in this community. There are more community theater groups here than there were 10 years ago, right? And I think so I do think that they kind of I get back to your point about the economic impact. I think one of the challenges that Tiffany has and we as a community have is really how do we sell ourselves to the rest of the world? I was thinking about this the other day. I think you would be hard pressed to find another city that has more public art in downtown anywhere. I think, aside from maybe Washington, D.C., definitely more than New York City, definitely more than Los Angeles, and high quality public art. I mean, world renowned artists, and that is something that we need to find a way to really tell that story.
Absolutely.
And research will show you too, before we went through that new Catch Des Moines launch, we did a series of interviews and talked to a lot of prospective visitors, folks that haven't been here in the last 8 years and folks that have been here in the last 2 years. And what you saw and heard over and over again is that those that have been here recently, they view this as an arts and culture community. They know it. The people that haven't been here in a while, those are the ones we're working on and we need to continue to work on because they view us as an ag town. So you're exactly right. That is the challenge and the struggle. But for those that have been here, they see it, they understand it, and in fact, through our surveys, we were able to determine that for a leisure traveler, one of the #1 reasons they're coming here is for arts and culture. They've identified that. They've connected it to our region, and that is because of the wonderful organizations we have in the community, and because people like Des Moines Performing Arts put their necks out on the line in 1997, and you know, they did challenge the other organizations and say, no, we're not in competition. This is a collaborative effort, and what benefits you is going to benefit us.
And you know, those are wonderful attractions or issues that you know of through the work that you do. I think we as a community need to do a better job of finding a way to make sure that not only do the outsiders know what we have and the value, but it's our residents and our business people and our politicians that we need to make sure they have a good, solid understanding and the facts to back that up so that they can value and support us the way we should be supporting as well.
I think one of the things that always comes up, it's not I don't think it's an educated statement, but you'll hear as well, it's arts and culture. How does that benefit the community? You hear that type of thing all the time. It's the thing that gets cut out of schools, and you know, I'm curious your guys' thoughts on. I'm sure you had to answer this question before, but some of the positive things that this brings to the community, having a rich cultural scene.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Behind salary decisions,
Mhm.
you know, one of the next factors that someone considers when, you know, transferring or accepting a new position in the community is what do the arts and culture have to offer? What are those benefits that they can enjoy and partake in regularly?
And I think it's ironic you say this because obviously, you know, well, first of all, I mean, this is a great start, and I feel like culture now being more prominent, let's say within the media coverage in Greater Des Moines and across the state. I feel like it's being elevated as a subject within, let's say, the greater pieces of the puzzle. If you're looking at Iowa and knowing what are the components that can make our state great, low taxes, good public safety, a strong school system, you name it, all these different elements, quality of life, it's very intangible. And I think that's why we take it for granted. But it is absolutely imperative for us, if we really look at it as a state, being a business, who are we competing with? Well, we're competing with the Omahas, the Minneapolises, Kansas Cities, and arguably I'd like to think we can compete with Chicago, LA, New York to recruit and retain the best and the brightest. And that's the thing, there's this great, we have so much momentum. And so I do find it ironic that there is still this stereotype, and I think that we unfortunately feel like we're always climbing this ladder. It's this uphill battle to educate, whether it's the legislature, constituents, elected officials, and just in general people across the state, in terms of ensuring they find the value in frankly the character of their communities, because it's absolutely critical, I think, to defining who we are and where we're going to go.
About 2 years ago, we were looking at our beats and how we kind of split our reporters up and what different areas they covered. And we never used to have, and there was not a single person that was in charge of looking at the economic impact of culture in the different organizations in the past. And so things would come up, and we had a newsroom full of people that banking and finance and insurance, and so those topics didn't necessarily jump out at people in our own newsroom. And so that was one of the areas we carved out right away. And Chelsea, you guys all interact with Chelsea at some point. That was the first person that we had actually looking for story ideas in that area. And that, that's a small shift, but it was amazing in our newsroom how many different opportunities come in front of us that are business stories, but they just happen to be in the culture scene. So it's a small shift, but you can see how something like that can.
And from how we market ourselves, and we look at everybody at the table, and I think that also the diverse perspectives we have in terms of whether it's perception or reality. You've heard it before. We don't have mountains, we don't have oceans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think I'm surprised that we haven't capitalized on this yet, and I think it's our job to push this and brag about it. We have to, because I think it'll take us to the next level as a state. We have a stagnant population, and we have unique demographics as a state, and I think we can attract the next generation to want to live, work, and play here, be it Des Moines or again in any of the wonderful communities across the state.
In terms of the economic impact, next week we have a Broadway show, White Christmas, that we hear for 8 performances, and
Be there.
The number of people that are required on that evening to do one performance is about 200 people, all paid, and yet only about 15% of those people are on stage. The rest of them are wardrobe people, stagehands, bartenders, ticket takers, and that's just in our building. That's just at the Civic Center. Then you take all of the waiters and cooks and serve, the people that are required for the dinners for people that are coming, the people that are parking cars, all of those kind of things. It's a huge impact. And if you juxtapose that to, I'm not trying to take anything away this, but if you juxtapose that to the movies, you have 10 movie theaters with 3 or 4 people making minimum wage working at each one.
Right.
It's a very different thing. So the impact is enormous when you look at something like that and what it does for, because then it allows the restaurants to flourish in a downtown that has great visitors for conventions and the like during the week, but then the weekends are a little slower.
Sure.
So it's pretty cool.
We call it the ripple effect, and you're spot on there, because, and I would even wager to bet that an event like something at the Civic Center reaches further into the economy than perhaps going to a movie. In addition to dinner, it might be a car wash or a new outfit, and certainly the babysitter or whatever it might be. So it's not just those immediate expenses.
And you have 80 people that are traveling with the show that are staying in hotels.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Renting cars and flying into town from Baltimore.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
And seeing those people out
yeah.
makes a difference for those that are new to our community
Right.
or those that are visiting the community. That it does all add to the vibe.
Well, let's shift gears here for just a little bit. Why don't you all update us on what's been going on in your particular areas that you feel that our readers might be interested in knowing about?
Well, I can start on that one. We have been working closely with many cultural organizations, and this kind of stemmed from Capitol Crossroads. Well, it did stem from that, but it's we've been working on unveiling a new cultural website. So it would be an extension of our existing website because, it's expensive to develop additional sites and the staff to manage those, but it will be an extension of our existing site. And through that, and with all those conversations, we've also been, the topic of the community calendar has resurfaced. So while we can't say that it's done and ready to roll by any means, the fact that so many of us are coming to the table and working collaboratively is something that we find extremely exciting and encouraging. And I would hope that you won't just see talk, but you'll see action within the next year. Is there anything you can add to that?
No, and I agree, and I think that that's a good point. And I think to go off what Jeff is saying, he has a much different perspective too than I do, which I appreciate hearing, because I think that can be the perception where it's more competitive than it really is. But what Capitol Crossroads and then within Cultural Capital has forced us to do is sit down and talk. And really for herding cats in the cultural world, it's hard. And again, where you have limited time, limited resources, but if you sit down and we can all talk about the needs, chances are your neighbor's experiencing the exact same thing. So it's a really good opportunity to simplify it. To have a staff member on Jeff's team and any other cultural institution, how inefficient to sit and be paying somebody to upload, White Christmas on 19 community calendars.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And that to us is, okay, if we're going to do another community calendar, it can't be that, okay, Joe Schmo, now here's your 20th. No,
Right.
It needs to be one, it's the one-stop shop, it's the cultural stop, and how can it then,
Aggregate.
export exactly to the others. So that is something where that's a problem. How do we bring a solution, but that frankly is then going to make it easier for the user to find out what's going on this weekend. And then to segue really quickly, we are coming out with a cultural app from the Department of Cultural Affairs. This is something that we've been working on for a long time, and the launch is planned for early January. Really excited about this. It is essentially, somebody described it to me as the Yelp of culture. And what we're in the process of doing right now is trying to populate all the data sets across the state with every museum, every piece of public art, every historic site, every building on the National Register, underground railroad sites, art centers, the zoo, anything cultural. And we're going to get to a point where ideally then people can share, like curate tours. So if somebody wants to go and their interest is in Civil War in Iowa, there's a good one-day trip for them in Southeast Iowa. And that people can share that, but we'll help curate it. We have a 99 county bucket list of where to go in each county. And then again, it's just encompassing arts, history, and culture. So we really hope that this can push people to think of staying in Iowa. I know I've talked to friends where they have wanted to get to Decorah in the fall, and you know, it just seems so hard. Whereas hopefully we can supply this, and you can say, you know what, I have 8 hours. I want to spend this much time on the ground, and they can plug all this in along with their interests. And if it's public art, we can show them along the way where they can stop, or they can go and take the visit and do the tour. So again, we're really excited about this and hope that it elevates culture as such a, frankly, critical part of tourism, economic development, and again, just bragging about how much we have in our state in terms of cultural assets. It's unbelievable.
I think the day trip idea is a good. It'd be really easy for people to use something like that. There's so many different things like that out there. I know we had a friend that goes around to all the, I'm not gonna remember the word now for it, but weird tourist attractions all around the state.
The oddball sites?
Yeah, I forget what it's called, but I know there's a name for it, but I always think that's funny. She just goes out to different places and she blogs about it where she goes.
Well, our organization oversees what's now called Coles Commons, which we're now just finishing the $13 million fundraising to, we've actually begun to work on it, and Tiffany feels the vibration of her offices are adjacent to it. And that's going to really provide something that we've never had in downtown, a really great space for a lot of different events. The center of the Coles Commons will be this area that will be brick and granite, and it will be the size roughly of a football field. And so we will be able to do things that we've never been able to do. The Wine Fest will have a much better place for that. We will be able to do markets there. We'll be able to do concerts. We'll be able to do. I want to show the Tony Awards, which is very important. There's a big screen out there. So we have a lot of stuff that we're thinking about now, but it's kind of exciting to have that in space, because what was formerly known as Nala Plaza always had challenges with the way that the place was designed, with the reflecting pool and all of that, which are now gone. So it's kind of cool after 34 years to kind of revisit that and turn that into what will be a really great destination. And the umbrella sculpture is staying exactly.
MD, I know you're with DMAC now, and so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about that for you personally, the change from Bravo, and talk a little bit about how that's gone for you so far.
Sure. My first response to that would be Bravo helped me in my career personally to allow me to move on and return to higher education. There are certain opportunities that we have, some of us in this community, that allow you to be in a position and a place and at certain tables to connect and develop very strong, important relationships with people. So I'm grateful to my experience to Bravo for that perspective, as well as my prior experience helping to develop the Papa John Education Center and some of that, to help me personally get to where I'm at in my career today. And I assured DMAC upon my hire that you can certainly bet that I'm going to use those relationships and leverage them in any way possible to do my job as effectively as I can. So, it's interesting. I am no longer the ED of Bravo, but I am certainly a much more active, invested cultural consumer in Greater Des Moines. And I certainly, do observe differently now, and my opinion is probably a little stronger than it ever was. But also, even upon leaving Bravo, I find that my commitment to the arts in Greater Des Moines is stronger than it ever has been as well. So it's been very positive. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, well, no, I think it's, that's one of the reasons we have you on here is, obviously Bravo's in the process of looking, or maybe has found a...
I understand they're very close.
They're very, very close, so by the time this comes out, I'm pretty sure that we'll have that figured out. But is any any of your role at DMAC going to have an influence on culture?
I have been appointed to a public arts committee that is formulating within DMAC. DMAC is looking at a plan and some possible, expansion and campus modifications, and so yeah, I'm on a new committee there. I didn't ask to be on it; they came to me right away. And also, it's interesting because of my involvement with Bravo. There is of course a fundraising component and the entire model to identify funds or hotel tax revenue and anything like that. And I certainly intend to continue to work that and support DMAC in that manner, but also I think I can help to make a much stronger arts connection with the Greater Des Moines Community College, as well. So yeah, there's all kinds of opportunity. DMAC is growing and expanding. Ankeny is a critical component of the Greater Des Moines area, so I intend to leverage that and use that any way I possibly can.
I think really quickly too, given that education, we haven't talked about that, and we are trying to work very closely with as the Department of Cultural Affairs, with the Department of Education, because I think the other thing that is probably underappreciated, and I've learned that through my discussion with them, is that a core part of arguably all cultural institutions a core part of their mission is education. The programming that Jeff does is invaluable to schools and connecting them with, especially when you look at the cuts that have occurred, arts and education, and frankly, why we need to go from STEM to STEAM. The fact of the importance of access to fine arts and these hands-on experiences, it's critical. And these institutions, they're really satellite learning centers, and that's what we're trying to work towards, is to formalize that direct line in terms of learning between the principals and teachers, schools, to these institutions, and the education experts that are under the roofs of these institutions that are working with thousands of kids, hundreds of thousands of kids across the state every year, and it's just a critical component to their curriculum and their learning. And I think that's something else we need to better ensure we're creating a better understanding and awareness of what these institutions do, aside from obviously the great experience we can have from an entertainment perspective. They're doing so much more than that as well.
Yeah, for our organization, we're serving, we started with a half-time person in education maybe 10 years ago to now 4 full-time people in education. We're serving around 75,000 people a year, 50,000 students with one bus-in program where we're bringing kids to the Civic Center and the Temple Theater to experience national touring acts that are curriculum-based shows. So there are science shows, history shows, there are math shows, and then we are also partnering with the Kennedy Center in Washington to provide teacher training to integrate the arts into the classroom. And that is such an exciting program where we bring, again, national instructors in, and they find ways to be able to integrate dance and music and visual arts into everyday learning. So challenging a kid, you can talk for hours about the water cycle, but saying to a child, let's come up with a dance to show how the water cycle works, they're going to remember that a lot longer. And so that's been a very, very, Mary is absolutely right. And all of the institutions that I think of the major cultural institutions in Des Moines have huge education initiatives that are bringing students in, taking stuff to the classrooms. It's a big, big part of what we do. And it costs a lot of money. We charge $1 for students to come to the Civic Center. It costs us about $10 a student to do that. So we have to do fundraising, but it's easy fundraising.
Arts education is core, foundational to innovation. So we just need to recognize that and support that as much as possible.
My wife was a theater minor when she went to college. She went through for education, and so she did her master's, and I got to read all her thesis papers and that kind of stuff. So she did one on education of the arts in schools and the impacts of that. So I got the full background on all that. But I always thought it was really interesting the different ways, like you're talking about, finding ways to incorporate it throughout the existing curriculum, because this is our third roundtable, and first one was on STEM education, and what came up during that was STEM is even in the arts. It's not a science, technology, engineering, math. And that's it. That's kind of the umbrella that fits into everything. I'm just kind of curious your guys' thoughts on the STEM aspect in the cultural aspect too.
I'd say very supportive. That's where I said, sorry, STEM to STEAM would be
Yeah.
adding arts right in between
Yeah.
the E, the E and the M. And I think that's very doable. Do I think that would be send a great message? Because again, I think arts, what does it mean? Oh, great. How do I connect with that piece of art? I think sometimes people have a hard time understanding what it means. What is culture? It can sometimes seem elitist. It's not. I mean, it could be walking down the East Village and the incredible character and the sense of place that the East Village has created from rehabbing those buildings. And so I think that something as simple as going to STEAM helps elevate the arts as critical to learning. And I think everybody knows it. I hear the lieutenant governors talk about STEM to STEAM, and frankly, other states are doing it. So I do think that is trending that way. I think we need to keep, again, I think it's awareness, and we need to keep pushing it to get it to the next level.
There's an incredible amount of research that shows that the involvement in music and the arts has an enormous impact on things like math. I mean, music and
Absolutely.
math are
Yeah.
almost linked together completely. And I think the other thing that we face sometimes, and Mary touched on this, is we tend to like to put people into little boxes, and we tend to think of artists as being, silly little guys running around with a beret and a smock. But the reality is that art touches us in a lot of different ways. I mean, think of all the graphic artists that are in this building or that are in other buildings all around Des Moines, and the people that design clothing or that design homes, architects. I mean, it's all around us, and yet we tend to kind of try to put it in a little narrow box. So I think Mary is right. We need to find a way to integrate that arts education more and more instead of going away from it.
Arts it's a big tent.
Yeah.
It's a big tent, and it should be, and I think we can keep
I think
expanding.
Maggie can identify with that. When I first sat her down and said, here's culture, and you look at the things that we all throw under culture, there's plenty of things that could be a full-time beat in itself.
But think about it, if I remember, it was a few years ago, we sat down to do strategic planning with, frankly, it was a group of Arts Council staff, and we started off with what should be the easiest question. What is culture? We looked around everybody. Nobody could answer it. And think if we can't answer it, I heard somebody who picks up, then it's great, the Des Moines Register too, highlighting arts and culture more in a more prevalent manner, but how does anybody else define it when you say culture and it's important? Because you're right, to each his own, they're able to stereotype it, and again, I think we have to better define it.
That's interesting. I'm sure Jeff Wald, I'm not sure if you guys have heard with him before, but he's the guy in charge of the STEM initiative. Be definitely worth the conversation. Because that arts came up, and we talked for a pretty good period about it too. And I thought it was really just an interesting thought, the way they view it. But I think the way people in general view STEM is they think very close buckets of science, technology, engineering, math.
Right. And how many of those, in order to be successful, rely on the ability to innovate and be creative?
Right. And that's ultimately what it came down to, is critical thinking and that aspect of it that STEM can help ingrain in students. It's really interesting.
Well, we've talked a little bit about the challenges and some things that the culture scene needs to work towards, but let's kind of segue into what has really worked in your specific areas this past year, what we might see more of, capitalizing on that success moving into 2014.
I think that just my observation, granted I've been out of the picture for 6 months or so, but it's obvious to me in the last couple of years that the level of conversation, the dialogue has certainly escalated. The willingness and ability to collaborate, I think, has improved. And maybe it's because of Capital Crossroads, cultural capital, the CVB, addressing or partnering with the arts perhaps in ways that had not taken place before. Maybe it's the fact that we have a good solid leader, through the Department of Cultural Affairs. There's been a variety of things. You know, the Civic Center puts Des Moines on a map in a way, and it draws attention and excitement and focus to this community, just similar to the Papa John Sculpture Garden, the way it does, that allows us to have a good, exciting, valuable conversation. We all want excitement in our lives, and we want something that we can be proud of and show our guests when they come to visit. And these are the examples of doing that. But we have got people, you know, at all levels in place now that I think are willing to participate in the conversation. My sense is that that's increased over the last few years. I don't know if you guys would agree with that or not.
No, can I interrupt? I'm actually curious to learn a little bit more about the Capitol Crossroads, because I'm not quite familiar with how that works, and you know, how are you guys moving forward on that for whoever's involved?
That's just perfect. That's just perfect. You know, my peripheral vision, you guys all went like this. Should we all look at Carol? No. Carol, you want to help us out on this one? Yeah. Capitol Crossroads, there are 11 capitals, and cultural capital is one of them. This was essentially, to sum it up, it's a strategic plan for Greater Des Moines, and bottom line is it's a 5-year plan. We're about 2.5 years in. I told Jean Meyer yesterday it felt like 8. But anyway, it's been a good exercise for Greater Des Moines, because I think, especially in the cultural area, I would argue, because again, I think we have great momentum in all different areas, and I think what each institution does, they do really well. I think too, there's probably a lack of awareness in regards to, I was talking to Richard early the other day about the symphony. You know, I'm not an expert on comparisons of other cities, but when you look at our symphony, oh my gosh, I mean, it can compete with any larger metropolitan area in the country. You don't just get Book of Mormon by not doing things really, really well at Des Moines Performing Arts. I mean, that is a testament to how we run these institutions. Now, what this forced us to do is all come together and identify, you know, what are the needs. And essentially, we have a few different areas that we're focusing on. I won't get into them too in depth, but because we've touched on them all here, and we're trying to explore how to best move forward. Because just because we've identified a need, for instance, with the calendar, if we can't solve that problem, just creating another calendar to make it the 20th, I would argue we shouldn't do it unless we can do it right. But that's something that's been researched. CVB is fabulous in terms of elevating cultural tourism. We continue to do so in terms of trying to elevate cultural tourism. And we have a marketing and PR element, and a goal of ours would be to find some funds to try to really invest in a mini campaign to promote culture in Greater Des Moines. You know, I just saw a presentation. They're doing it in Kansas City. Let's do it here. We can compete with Kansas City.
Right.
You know, we can do it here. Get some billboards, some media buys, and make it, you know, holistic, where it's not just pushing one, but it can frankly be catchy and get people's attention when they're driving in on I-80, or those who live here who may not know about these great assets. We're also looking at a speaker presentation series. Advocacy is probably the biggest animal and hardest to figure out. As you look at most sectors, let's call them, you know, you have the banks. Well, they have an association that they can all be members of, but ultimately it serves the greater good in terms of advocacy. We don't necessarily have that. We have had it. It hasn't worked. It's not sustainable. If we could solve that problem, I'd be a very happy person. I think some other people in the room would be as well. In addition to that, we have some others that are kind of moving. They're under us, but they're going to happen anyway. Regional music economy, you all know Amadeo. He's looking at a mid-sized venue. He does 80-35. You have Des Moines Social Club with SAC. You have Des Moines Arts with Justin Mandelbaum. Those things are all what they're focused on, and we're just trying to, frankly, ride on their coattails. And so those are good things that are happening, and we're here to support them. But those other elements are really the ones where we look at cultural tourism, marketing, PR, advocacy, the calendar website, and the speaker presentation series is really where we're trying to focus. And hopefully if we can have some success and let's say, get some of that low-hanging fruit, which I think it is, I think we'll be in a much better place a year from now.
Talk about that. The advocacy organization, is that something you guys have talked about in any way, trying to set up? Or how would you envision that working?
There's a group, a 501c3 called the Iowa Cultural Coalition, and it is kind of mothballed, and frankly, it's participates in the legislature in terms of an advocacy day on the Hill, but arguably when 20 people show up, the message that sends is that not many people are invested in arts, history, and culture across the state. So how do we try to get the right people at the table, build a sustainable structure, a network, regionally maybe and across the state, that could ideally allow us to sustainable funding, try to explore that at the legislative level, or more importantly then, ensure that nothing happens to the Bravo money, to try to ensure that city council members appreciate the good that Bravo does in their communities. So it's an ongoing, not taking it for granted and knowing we need to sustain the money we have, but how do we possibly find more sustainable funding, which would be the ultimate goal, or positive policy, if you will. I think that's the other thing, is there can be positive policy that can be passed that can help impact culture, and we need an organization that really is it's a communication network. We don't have that, and it's much easier said than done, but I think that would be my number one priority if I could accomplish anything at the DCA. That would be it, and it's definitely under cultural capital.
If I could just jump on that just a little bit. Regarding cultural capital, I think there's progress that's easily identified in the fact that out of the 11 capitals, one of those was identified as arts and culture. Jeff, you've been involved in the community longer, but the arts have a place at the table, at a higher level and a stronger voice than I believe they've ever had before. And that just didn't happen. It happened because there are organizations like Bravo and all the organizations that have supported the economic impact research and have made sure that they're present at the city council meetings and a variety of other opportunities to make sure that folks that are the decision makers and the planners understand that there's value coming out of the arts and that they want to make sure that our voice is there and ready to be heard. So that's progress in itself, I think.
Tiffany, what's been working at the Pension and Visitors Bureau? What have you guys been?
Well, we're a year in with our new Catch Des Moines look and messaging, and we'll start testing that in the next year to make sure that it truly is working. But we can tell you from an analytics standpoint that it's certainly cutting through, so we need to go through and do a little bit more research. But we're really focused right now on 3 different markets from a leisure traveler perspective. And that would be primarily the female 25 to 54 with kids, because she is by far the #1 planning individual in the family to put together a weekend getaway for the fam. And then the other 2 markets that we have just started really marketing to recently would be the boomer market, because they have, research will show you, more dollars to spend than any other group right now, and there are more of them, and they have more free time. And a lot of what we offer in the community directly aligns with what they're looking for. And again, that is arts and culture, the culinary arts, fantastic wine excursions, local distilleries. So we have all of those things. So we need to be doing more marketing and advertising, talking about those things. And the final would be the young professional. So in the past, we've kind of ignored the young professional, thinking they don't have a lot of money. Well, that's not the case. That 20 to 30 something that doesn't have children, but they're looking for a weekend getaway, girls getaway, guys getaway, Des Moines is a great option for them, because just as Jeff said earlier, they can go to a Broadway show, have a fantastic local dinner, and fill the rest of their weekend with other activities, whichever way they want to go, whether it's the nightlife or shopping, or again, more checking out the museums, the art center, the public art that we have. So we're pleased with how Catch Des Moines is being received from an analytical standpoint. We need to go in and do the research to make sure that it truly is cutting through like we hope.
Tiffany, I remember I did a story back when I was a reporter, and it was about the research and trying to get people to talk about what their image was of Des Moines. And I think I remember one of the big findings was there was kind of almost a blank slate in a lot of ways, which I think I remember you saying at the time it's better than maybe something like Detroit, where there's some possibly negative images that come to mind, but but there wasn't necessarily a great positive image either. So I wonder, have you guys done any looks again recently at that?
And that will all be part of this new, within the next year, we're going to go out and go back to those people that we talked to a year ago and beyond, and test them again and say, okay, we've been marketing to you. Is it working? Have you changed your image of the city? What do you think of us now? And what have you experienced while you're here? But you're exactly right. They would say, those that had not been here in 8+ years or had never been here would say, Des Moines is an ag community, small town, not much to do, vanilla, boring. Those were the words. Really, those were the words we heard over and over again. So we have a big task ahead of us, and that is to reach out to those prospective visitors and make sure that they know what we all know, and that's that there is so much to do and experience in this city. And that's where the limited funding, that issue comes into play, as well as informing the locals. The locals, you are our biggest advocates and our best resource for referrals.
It's interesting because I think what everyone always says is once you're here, people know and they understand and they're able to see the different things that are here. But it's tough when, as I said before, my wife came from Florida, and so she did not have any expectations for what she was going to find. And she just did a bachata the other night about transitioning from Florida to Des Moines. The Civic Center was in there, and the sculpture park is in there, and all these things that she just didn't even have an idea that it was here. So you know it once you're here. The hard part is probably just getting people here in the first place.
Well, and I mean, we see groups from China coming over to experience our sculpture park. By the busload, there are these visitors coming in and we don't have the budget to market internationally. The buzz is spreading. It's working. We need to just continue to build upon that. And I truly believe that it comes down to collaboration, and I believe we're on the right track.
If I could jump in there real quick, we have an opportunity that is so unique compared to any other state or city in the nation. During caucus season, the eyes of the nation and in many cases the world are upon us. And I think we're doing a much better job of capitalizing on that opportunity, but we could be doing even, so much more. I mean, the idea of somebody pulling a couple of hay bales out now, I have no problem with that, and we should honor and value our agricultural settings. Right. But if they're going to pull a hay bale into downtown Des Moines, we've got a problem, because the backdrops and the beauty that we have, thinking about when President Obama was reelected, and the backdrop of beautiful East Village and the Christmas lights and the Capitol up behind there, that's incredible. And talk about a golden free public relations opportunity to advertise ourselves to the world. During that season, we should have all kinds of events and activities and everything going on, to showcase everything that's happening in this community, because those cameras want those opportunities. We just need to put them in front of them.
And you're exactly right. I mean, I think it's a balance, and I think it's one we haven't quite gotten right yet. I think we can be proud of our agricultural heritage and knowing it's frankly why Iowa is doing so financially well. But what's the balance with also ensuring we aren't viewed as not being culturally savvy? And let's hang our hat on Grant Wood, who's a perfect example of just a good element of combining the two, of history but art and the connection to Iowa. One example. But I think there can be that blend. I hope. To know we can, again, I don't think it's pretending to be something we're not. Right. I think we're just modest. We're modest. Iowans are modest, and I don't think we've maybe just need to take advantage of our bragging rights. We haven't really all talked about public art, and I think we've all been a part of it. I'd say something that I think I'm amazed by, but really pleased to see. Communities have taken the initiative to develop public art commissions on their own, and to me that right there is I think that says a lot, that communities are, and whether there are some cities that actually employ one person who's dedicated, I'm saying across the state, under their city umbrella, that's dedicated to the arts, and whether it's the Public Art Commission or Art on the River or whatever it may be. But then you also have volunteers coming together because they care about investing in public art throughout their communities. And I really think it's important because that's going to continue to, again, add to the fabric of our communities. And it's happening organically, but it's a trend. And I think it is. It's underappreciated. You look at the sculpture garden, but, you know, ISU has the largest public art collection in the country. Part of that is art and state buildings, which is our umbrella where you have to use a percentage for art. But right there, I mean, ISU, who knows that? That's incredible. Who thinks ISU, who would guess that?
You said
Out of 10 universities, the largest public art collection in the country. And it's the 35th anniversary of Art and State Buildings next year. And with all, if you've been to University of Iowa, we think then they may, we're questioning, we need to do our research, if they're going to surpass, because University of Iowa, between Hampshire, the School of Music, the art building, that in each of those they have to encompass public art. So, which is so great that look at these universities, an ISU being dramatically different from Iowa City, but you know, and look at that has embraced it and frankly is a huge part of those communities.
The arts are a community's personality in many ways. And certainly the majority of the personality makeup comes from the arts.
I've never heard somebody who, after coming back from Paris or Rome, has said, gee, they have great shopping malls there.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Well, on the subject of doing things right, Jeff, I think it's safe to say that something the Performing Arts Center is doing right is the caliber of shows that it's bringing to Des Moines and offering the people. So, you know, kind of on the topic of, you know, the Willis Broadway series, you guys have been doing that for several years. I'm kind of curious to know, you know, what's your secret behind that? I mean, how does that happen? How do you get such a good caliber of shows to come to our town?
Well, you know, a big part of it is having a presence in New York. I'm there a lot. I'm there about once a month. It's a very tight community, and being a part of that community involves different things. Serving on the Broadway League, I'm very active in that, which is kind of the trade association for Broadway. We also invest in Broadway shows, which is something that pays dividends down the road. And it moves us from just being a consumer to being really part of the development of shows. And I think that's really I think the other thing is we have incredible audiences. We've built the Willis Broadway series. We have over 10,000 subscribers to that series, which is higher than Kansas City, higher than Omaha, higher than Minneapolis. And that means that before we place one ad to sell a ticket, we've already sold 10,000 tickets of the 20,000 that we have to sell for a week of Broadway. So that is a huge, huge thing. And I also think that it's a lot about playing to the market, because some people think that building an audience means dumbing down. And I do not believe in that. I never have. I think the fact is that quality is our best marketing tool. You may not like the shows that we bring, but you can't argue that they are of a caliber that you won't see anywhere else. And that to me is the big secret sauce, is going for the very best, not being afraid to do stuff that might be controversial. You know, there's a movie coming out in a few weeks called August Osage County with Meryl Streep. It was a play on Broadway. We did the tour here. It's 3.5 hours long, with 2 intermissions. And you might think that people would have stayed away from it. The F word used about 22 times in Act 1 alone. And that was the most riveting piece of theater, and I have so many people that will still tell me that it was one of the best shows that they've ever seen. And, you know, that's the kind of stuff that I think puts us on the map, is that we are not afraid, you know, there's a place to have Cats and Annie and Grease and all those shows, but to have really, and I put White Christmas in that also, it's got a little bit of fluff, but having really high quality shows, whether it's in the Willis Broadway series or our dance series where we're bringing world-class dance to Des Moines, or whatever it is, we are really...
Or Dixie.
Or Dixie. Dixie's Tupperware Party. But you know, it's interesting, we have our temple, we have the Light at the Temple series, and one of the first artists in that series, John Batiste, there was a full-page article in the Wall Street Journal 2 weeks ago on John Batiste, and he's going to be at the Temple Theater in a couple of months. And so having that kind of, that it's all about the quality.
You mentioned the investing. I'm just kind of curious how that works. How does that work?
In general, we are part of a consortium of Broadway presenters from around the country that pool our money together to, we're called the Independent Presenters Network. And we will pool our money and put an investment into a show to gain the rights for presenting the show on the road sooner than you would if it was just waiting for it. We set up a fund about 12 years ago within Des Moines Performing Arts that we put money, if we have a good year, we have an operating surplus, we'll put some money into that. Our investments usually are no more than $50,000, which may sound like a lot, but in the scope of things, our risk of doing a week of a Broadway show is anywhere from $400,000 to $800,000. So we're invested in a couple of shows that did really well last year. Pippin won the Tony Award for Best Revival of a Musical, and Kinky Boots won the Tony Award for Best Musical. This year we're involved in a show called If Then that'll be opening in the spring, and something closer to home is The Bridges of Madison County, the musical that we are going to be investing in, which has a great creative team. It's opening in February, and so the eyes of Broadway will be on Iowa once again. This will be the fourth musical that's opened on Broadway that's based in Iowa.
And how cool is that?
Yeah.
That we're getting these shows before other major cities around the Midwest. And talk about economic impact there. You know, sometimes it's who has it first. You know, the early bird gets the worm, so to speak.
Is that
Yeah.
Book of Mormon?
Yeah, the Book of Mormon, we were very, very early in that. And part of it was the relationship that I have with the booking agent and that extended to the producers. And they were looking for a Midwestern city to play in to kind of figure out what they had. And so we were able to, I mean, Kansas City still hasn't, I don't think they have it scheduled yet. So, I mean, it is kind of amazing. And if we can use those kind of things to kind of catapult and bring tourists in, it makes a huge difference.
You know, it feeds or supports that civic pride. I love nothing more than knowing that we are getting those shows before other communities. And, you know, so many of us, we love our community, we love Des Moines, and it makes you proud that you're part of something like this because of those opportunities.
Looks like we have about just under 10 minutes left. So Megan, if you got a couple questions you want to get out there, then we'll set it to the closing thoughts.
I can do that. Is there anything that you guys feel is missing from the Des Moines cultural scene today that you would like to see, or maybe see steps being taken toward in 2014?
I've been asked that a few times in the past, and kind of a common answer, and I don't mean to belittle it by any means, but I think we're culturally rich in Greater Des Moines. I think we have, you know, most of everything that most people want. We don't have an aquarium. Okay, you know, maybe there's an opportunity there. I don't know that the Midwest needs, you know, another aquarium. But for the most part, I think, you know, when you look at the gamut of the arts and the different disciplines, so to speak, if you want something, it's here.
I agree, and I think the way that we could ask for help is to get locals more engaged and involved, to get in there, check out one of the shows. If you've never been to a Temple show or to the Civic Center for one of the Broadway shows, we need to participate so that what we do have continues to be successful, so that we can grow what we have. We should be proud of what we have.
And don't take it for granted.
That's
You know,
right.
It will exist and thrive if we're all supporting it and part of it.
I think the other thing too is to continually work towards making sure that everything we do is really high quality. Again, the Art Center is a great example of an institution that there are, I really think if you dig down and you look at the collection, you look at the curatorial work that they are doing there with the traveling exhibitions, you are hard pressed to find a better museum in the country, and it's free. And the reason that it's so high caliber is because years ago the founders said, we don't want to just have works of art by an artist. We want to have a major work by all the major artists. And so, we have paintings and sculptures in that collection that are world-renowned. And I just think it's something that we need to kind of integrate into. I would bet that if you went to the people that are in the front desk of hotels, that most of them couldn't name a single painting at the Art Center, which is really sad. We should really be able to talk about the fact that we have Edward Hopper's Automat, or that we have, there was a Francis Bacon triptych that was sold the other day for $140 million. We have one of the best Francis Bacon paintings in the world in the collection of the Whitman Art Center. And we ought to be able to talk about that. We ought to be able to sell that. And that's really, to me, if there is something that we should be aspiring to, is to make sure that we do quality work all the time, because that's really what sells.
And I think another opportunity or reminder is cross-promotion. Because a lot of these cultural entities are going to benefit if there is a visitor coming in for one specific thing. That one thing that they want to do, they're going to go solicit and look for other opportunities as well. So how can you create a partnership with another organization that is still going to benefit that individual that's coming in for a weekend, or a convention goer that's checking out the city for the first time? They're going to be back again next year. Maybe next year they're going to bring their full family because they've experienced what the city has to offer.
I'm curious, the social club is moving into their new home as well, and that's, it hasn't been it's not as big as the Civic Center for Performing Arts, but it's kind of almost, I don't even know, maybe you guys have a better word to describe what kind of art that is, or that kind of arts and culture, but talk a little bit about the growth of maybe young arts and culture. I don't know how to best describe that. But I'm curious.
I've characterized it a few different ways. Avant-garde, bohemian. Sometimes I think the sense of an arts community, or of a culture in a community of the arts, is, in addition to all of the institutional, traditional, valuable, high-quality components, sometimes people want to just stumble upon something or experience something, and it's nice as a community if we can have some of that. When you go to a conference somewhere and you stumble out after dinner and you walk down the street, you're looking for pretty much anything that's interesting or entertaining and reflects the personality of the community. So I do think the social club and 8035 and other components have contributed to a demographic, maybe that's not a fair word to use, but an audience of some kind that just wants something to experience in some way, so that they can, in many cases, get connected to the arts. And maybe that's what it is, and maybe that's where the value is as much as anything.
It was just interesting seeing the level of support that came with in order to get them into the new home. I thought that was pretty interesting to see. There's so many different fundraising efforts and stuff going on at the same time. The Des Moines Playhouse just went through a big fundraising. Botanical Center, House Commons. That's a lot of fundraising all happening at once.
Right, which causes donor fatigue, and there are, and in previous discussions, and I think the community recognizes that as a whole, there's an opportunity for the arts community to coordinate and elevate and communicate and support efforts based on a priority scale or something else that will really help to get certain projects or campaigns on and off the docket, perhaps more effectively and efficiently as well.
But that's a perfect example of why Des Moines is so great, is our philanthropic community. And we're so lucky, even when the perception is the trend, and not to say, because it is in many cases where you talk to a corporation, whether it's the grants or sponsorships, they say, you know what, arts and culture is either pared down or eliminated altogether. When you look at individual donations or private foundations or community foundations, they are supporting arts and culture, and you can see that because these institutions wouldn't be thriving as they are. And I think Des Moines, again, can compete with anyone in terms of the millions of dollars that have been invested in, going from west to east in Des Moines. But you look at the sculpture garden, and you're going down now to the botanical garden. And again, you just name it, you're right, there are several campaigns going on. Symphony just raised 10, and they're right now the botanical gardens on phase 2. Oh my gosh, yeah, you'd think that there would be, and I'm sure there is, but clearly there are these different interests that are care and believe in it.
And continuing to
And
support.
continuing to support it, and that's huge, because I do think that can continue to put us on the map with other cities even larger than Des Moines.
I just think we need to do a little better job of coordinating the efforts.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's hard to do because, you know, we were involved with Coles Commons. We raised the $13 million, and about half of that came from 3 major gifts. But that set the tone, and people want to support a winner. And what I've learned about fundraising over the 30 years of doing it is, if you can articulate something that is really going to benefit a lot of people, and that you've done your homework, and you've got the right people on the team, it's very easy to raise that money in this community. And Mary's right. When you look at the amount of money that the Art Center, Des Moines Performing Arts, the Symphony, and the Botanical Center, or Botanical Gardens have raised in the last 5 to 6 years, it's close to probably $60 to $70 million. And very little of that is public funding.
And that was
Yeah.
followed by a wave of the new Science Center development,
That's right.
I mean,
sculpture,
That's right.
and the new
World Food
library.
Prize.
That's right. That's
I
right.
mean,
Yeah, so
It's
you look at
incredible.
it, it's an astounding amount
It's
of
just-
money. Yeah, it
it's
really
astounding.
is for a community that is relatively small.
Sounds like something a business journal could go back and add up.
Oh,
It would be,
yes.
There you go, Megan.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about, I know that came out of one of our meetings, because to me, that's very powerful. If you were from an advocacy standpoint and looking at the public-private partnerships and how critical they are to what we do, it's huge in terms of the investment, and I'm speaking on behalf of the state or hotel motel. If you're looking at public dollars, and be it federal, state, or local monies, and you look at the private investment, oh my God, I mean, it's,
Well, and I do
peanuts.
want to give credit to the state, because we just recently were awarded what's called a CAP grant through the Vision Iowa program, which is Community Attractions and Tourism grant, of $1.1 million, which really kind of finished up the fundraising for Coles Commons. And to do that, we had to raise $11.3 million. But what a great way to finish it, because I've been doing the fundraising for about 1.5 years on that, and you do get to that point where you've really tapped out the people that you
Right.
targeted, and you are looking to finish this up. And it was a tremendous news for us to get that grant.
Again, the value of a public-private partnership.
Absolutely, and what spoke the loudest to them was that virtually all of the money that we had raised had come from the private sector. We had a little bit of money from Polk County and a little bit of money from the city of Des Moines, which we were grateful for, a little bit of money from Bravo, but the rest of it came from individuals and corporations and foundations, and that speaks volumes.
Absolutely.
We've kept you guys over the time limit here, so I just want to give you each a chance to kind of give a closing thought and final takeaway.
Sure.
So we'll start with Andy.
Sure. As I said earlier, I do believe this community is cultural rich, and that's not to say by any means we should rest on our laurels, and we need to amplify and celebrate and take advantage of every opportunity to help the locals as well as the non-locals understand and value what it is that we have here. But I often think about, if I had a child, I don't have children, but if I had a daughter or a son, we are in the middle of a golden nest of arts right here. And rather than taking them to the mall or to a movie, I would have a regular schedule, and I would be exposing my children to every venue that we have in this community on a regular basis. You know, the great artists and musicians and actors and engineers were born 2 years ago, or will be born 2 years from now. What better place to manifest that desire and generate that spark than right here in Des Moines? You know, we're very proud of those successes that have come out of Des Moines. Take advantage of it now, plant the seeds, and utilize the resources we have. I don't think we as a community fully recognize the potential that currently exists from the arts in Greater Des Moines.
Like the golden nest idea.
Yeah, it is. It's a golden nest. You know, there's plenty of eggs, but we've got the nest. So,
I agree. I think, Greater Des Moines and Iowa, there's so much more, momentum. And it's underappreciated, but we're making strides. I think we have so much potential. I think we're starting to get get noticed and be included. And this is a great start. Again, I've mentioned the Des Moines Register being more inclusive and highlighting arts and culture, being included in Capital Crossroads, you name it. I just think we're starting to inject ourselves in where we should have been all along. But again, so to me, I think we're going to start to get more noticed in the next year. I think there are big things to come, and I think we're going to be able to leave a great mark in the coming years.
And I have to put and the business record. Wonderful partnership with the arts community.
Well, that's how you make sure your final comment gets
Yeah. I'm going to get cut out. And the business record. Do you want me to dance?
And I agree. I think, from a CVB perspective, we're very proud of how far we've come in the last few years, but we look forward to where we're going. And I think a key component is this, this track that we're on with Capital Crossroads, the cultural organizations, these meetings that we've had that we're really strategizing, thinking through our marketing plan and how we're going to target individuals specifically that would be interested in arts and culture. Are we going to create a new e-newsletter, this new culture website, the community calendar, all of these pieces, while they are somewhat tactical, they are going to contribute to this overall strategy in reaching those prospective visitors and get them into our cities so that they can experience arts and culture and all of the other amenities that our city has to offer. But we're very encouraged and look forward to 2014 and what it will bring.
I don't have much to add. I mean, I think, again, we have so many great things going on in this community. And it's not just from the cultural side, but it's also all the amenities around it. Downtown is an incredible place. We have hundreds of visitors from out of town each year that are performers or they're members of a touring company. They're always so impressed and so amazed because they do have this vision seeing Des Moines on a calendar of theirs and saying, oh, what's it going to be like? Mm-hmm. But most of them get to stay downtown. They love the restaurants. They love the nightlife. They love the shopping. They love the art. They love all of those things, and I think that's something to celebrate.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it, and thank you to our audience as well. If this spurred a story idea for you, or you'd like to reach out to either myself or Megan, our contact information will be on the screen there, so feel free. We're always looking to, Megan especially as she's getting plugged into the community, is always looking to meet with people for coffee, and myself as well. So don't hesitate to reach out. And again, thank you guys for coming in. I have many more questions than I can. Megan had a whole list here we didn't get to, so appreciate it, and appreciate all your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.